Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the football experience. After another mini hiatus, I think the last time you guys saw our lovely faces was around 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
Uh,
and then all of a sudden we're sitting here and the season's starting on the weekend. Just crept up on me for sure.
yeah, it
When you message
came.
me saying we need to do a pod, I'm like, what? Why do we need to do a pod? It's like the season started. Like what?
Yeah, well, we already have a Friday night game tomorrow for the EPL, and I think you said that La Liga is starting as well this weekend. So
Oh yeah, I was surprised to find that one. I
yeah,
believe it is starting,
and
so
you
that
you
looks
know
really
you know
good.
there's already like a pretty monster clash on Sunday as well in the Premier League.
Well, we talk about Liverpool, Chelsea.
Yeah, like that's
Well,
that's already upon
we'll
us.
talk about how monsterish we think that clash is when
In
we
in
come
terms
to.
of in terms of like the pedigree of the club name
Of
itself,
course.
we'll see how well Liverpool finish the season strong, but we'll see how Chelsea go this season under Poch. And considering like I think they've offloaded like a bunch of players as well from their books, but yeah, like
But
we'll see
we
how
don't
they
need to
go.
step on that. Yeah, yeah, we'll talk. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll get
But
in. We'll get into all that. But yeah, like it could be at least the names on both team sheets. It should be Monster Clash, but we'll see how the
and
season
interesting,
goes.
interesting, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully it's
Well, I wanted
well, I
to.
sound just hopefully it's not a repeat. I think over the last 2 years, I
Um,
think
pro-
every game has been a draw. The
yeah,
last two
there
seasons.
was there was a. I think the last really good Chelsea Liverpool game. Well, no, actually, I think the League Cup final was a good game,
It was a good
but it
game,
was
but it
that
finished
two,
like
the
0-0
two.
or something or two
Yeah, it
two.
did finish 0-0
Yeah.
because I think the two cup finals finished 0-0, obviously, and the two games last season, I believe, also finished 0-0, and there was that terrible game at Anfield last season. Oof, post World Cup, that was disgusting. The last really good league game I remember is the one at Stamford Bridge, the 2-2 with the Kovacic. Unbelievable goal in that game. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting either way. But I wanted to touch on something that caught my attention in those 2 weeks we've been away before we go into previewing the season or whatnot. And like the bigger issue comes from, well, I guess my attention was drawn to it through Rafa Varane's comments about the workload on players and how this is unhealthy for players physically, mentally, and whatnot. And I think the point I want to like focus on, and there's no surprise that it sort of stems from a group of people making their living in football who look, some of them are very good, so I don't want to paint them all with the same brush. But for the most part, the whole systematic sort of um, setup of this group of people, and I want to see if you can guess which group of people have irated me with in regards to this added workload on players.
Well, isn't it mostly just Premier League players?
Well,
Is that
yeah, I
what
guess it
group
is
you're
on
referring to?
but I guess it is Premier League players because we'll touch on like the little issue, but the group of people who are creating the little issue. I think for me, referees, man, they annoy me. They annoy me so much. And this topic that we're going to talk about in regards to them using the World Cup style added time, which for the World Cup was fine. They were trying to do something, but to try and crack down on time wasting, I get the issue that Rafa Varane has brought up, but for me, that's not the one that interests me the most because I think if we want to argue about workload on players, it might already be a little bit too high, and we might be needed to find fixes to that. But for me, it's the passing off of responsibility from referees, and it's they don't want to actually do anything about it. They just want to be seen to do something about it. So what they're doing is they say, all right, well, if players are going to time waste, now we're just going to add 10 minutes onto games. And selfishly, I hate this because I don't think games need to be, what are we talking now, 2 hours of actual playtime? We
Yeah.
don't need that long of football. We really don't. If you want to crack down on it, take some responsibility and take some action on players who time waste. Don't just turn a blind eye and say, hey, I'm just going to be adding time at the end. It's like, well, who cares? Players are just going to keep doing it until eventually you crack and say, like, all right, fine, I won't add that much time because 17 minutes of time added on is just ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. And I think that point will come before players stop time. The point where players stop time wasting will be when referees stop falling for it and stop giving into it. And they say, you know what? And here's the other, and I don't know if this is a referee point or if this is an overall governing body point. But the action that should be taken for me is so simple. If you need medical treatment on the pitch, if you deem that you are so badly hurt in a contact sport, let's not forget, where players know the risks of playing this sport and they know that they're going to have to take contact within the game itself. If you deem that you're so badly hurt that a medical professional needs to come onto the pitch and you need to be tended to, they need to do their duty of care and check you out and medically assess you for no less than at least 10 minutes for me. Because to give a proper assessment, how long does it take when you book in a physio appointment? At least 10, 15 minutes, you know? And for some things, they need to see you for many sessions before they get to the cause of the pain. So if you deem that the pain is so bad that a medical professional needs to come on and you need to be seen to, they need to assess you. So 10 minutes you go off the pitch. If the manager deems it, then they can make a substitute, but you obviously can't come back on the pitch because you've been substituted. Or do they want to risk it and say, all right, we'll wait the 10 minutes for this player to be allowed back on the pitch? If you do that, I guarantee players will stop with the bullshit. So why are we adding like 10, 15 minutes at the end of games that is so unnecessary when referees could just start to stop falling for this bullshit and actually take some action against it? Because for me, I like that at least there's an intention to maybe stop it. I just hate what they plan to do to execute it. So I'm interested to get your viewpoint on that.
Well, I want to add on to that they also need to start handing out like yellow cards and even red cards as well. I don't think I've ever seen a red
second yellows.
I don't think I've ever seen a red card for time wasting. And they need to start doing it like already in the first half, not in the 80th minute. So like start punishing them early and make them think about the fact that okay, the ref is going to be on our backs for time wasting after the first minute, not after the 80th or the 85th minute when it doesn't really matter if we go down to 10 men because all we need to do is defend for like another five minutes or like 7 or 8 minutes with added time, traditional added time. So yeah, start getting on to time wasting and booking them early because like for instance like goalkeepers love to do it where they take like 3 minutes to take a goal kick. Book them in the first half and then book them a second time in the second half if you want. But don't be afraid to actually give them the second booking as well. Don't be like, okay, I've already given them a yellow. I can't give them a second yellow because of time wasting. It's like, no, just fucking give them a second yellow. Caleb, have I lost you or have I got you?
No, you got me back. You lost me for a bit.
Yeah. Well, that I want to add that onto your idea because I do agree with your idea because there's time wasting with like faking injuries and then there's also time wasting with like taking ages to take in throw-ins, taking ages to do corners, all that sort of stuff.
And our point I think comes down to the same group of people. It's referees, and this is the overall problem. I think not even just with this issue. I think it's a little bit of a somewhat societal problem with the systematization, I want to say is the word, but things being overly systematic. And this is just an excuse for referees to be able to hide behind something else that their bosses can then hide behind, and then they can all churn out the same crappy systematic line about, well, we're trying to do something by adding this much time at the end, and we say if a player wants to stay down. But the entertainment of the product, we're not going to want to sit there and watch for 15 minutes as these players get medical treatment and they time waste in whatever ways they can think of time wasting. Why don't we actually crack down on that? The game can stay around 90 minutes, but referees actually have to take onus and they have to show their own personality in the game. And that's what the system the systematic approach takes away. And it's just go by the book, do what we say. But referees aren't allowed to have their character, and they're not allowed to fight back against players. And I think players nowadays, and players in general, I think, will have responded so much better to referees who go back at them and stop falling for their bullshit. If someone, like the other one that really annoys me, players who everyone can just run up to the referee. And the thing that's really annoyed me is I'm seeing these in pre-season games this year. Like this year, I saw Eric Garcia the other day. He copped like maybe a forearm to his chest, went down holding his neck, deemed that he needed medical treatment so that they could, hoping that the referee would stop the game when they were defending a corner in the second phase. And I'm just like, this is pre-season, guys. Are we really doing this during pre-season? So, like, why? Man, and that's the thing that's really annoyed me, because now we see it in this time. Like, what level are we going to go to this next year? And I think if referees were able to just show their character and bite back at players and say, hey, get up. Like, just tell them, get up and play. Like, I just think these players all of a sudden, he's telling me to get up. Oh, I'm angry now, so they'll get up and they'll play. And it's just, you saw that so much more back in the day. And I just think referees are so weak nowadays. And I think this sort of approach to it allows them to be weak and allows them to hide behind that company line and allows people like, what's his name, the bald bloke?
Howard Webb.
He's the one I can't stand. He's the one they get in on the official Premier League. I want to say Dermot Gallagher.
Oh, yeah, I think it is.
He comes out and he churns his lines out every week. And I'm just like, man, so much defense for them. But anyway, that's my ref rant. This is something, I don't know, the MLS did it, didn't they? They put in their little, their injury time sort of thing. I don't know how it's going over there. Maybe it'll be more attraction with Messi there, but
Have I lost you again? Or?
Nerve.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I thought you said you fixed your internet.
Oh. I thought you froze it on me. Well, I froze it on. I don't know if I froze it on you.
You haven't frozen on me. Am I still frozen for you?
No, you're back now.
All right. Well, look, I think we're both in agreement with, like, I think they should only have added time for if there's substitutions, because that does take like 2 or 3 minutes, and that's unrelated in regards to like injuries but then again, substitutions are used tactically as well for time wasting. Maybe rule out the fact that you can't. Maybe bring in a rule that you can't make subs in the 90th minute in injury time. I remember they used to have that for indoor. For indoor football, you can't
for junior football as well.
Like you can't make subs in the last 2 minutes of time. So like, just to avoid time wasting, all that stuff. Even though it was interchange, like you could just bring on a player, but like you couldn't make subs in the last 2 minutes of time. So bring on something like that.
Yeah, and my final point on this, what I want people to do who could be bothered listening to my little incoherent rant against referees. I want people to see if they could go online. YouTube should have it. There's some sites that stream it. But just go back and watch. I don't know, you could go back to the 1970s, you could choose any World Cup game there. You could choose the World Cup game where Franz Beckenbauer plays, I think, the final hour and extra time, well, including extra time, carrying around his arm in his shirt like a sling because he's done that much damage, but he's like, there's no substitutes and I've got to keep playing. So if you want to go back that far, if you want to go back to I've watched a few games of 1954. Let me tell you, it's just crazy. Like the World Cup games there. The one thing that always staggered me was the Brazilian centre-back being able to just go up and like footy, take a mark, and then just cop the free kick, put the ball down, but he got no yellow card. So anytime he was beaten, Hilderaldo Bellini, the captain, anytime he was beaten by a ball, he'd just go up and catch the ball and put it down and concede the free kick. I'm like, what am I watching? But yeah, the game never stopped. It never stopped. If the ball went out, they just got the ball as quickly as possible, and then they kept playing. If it was a free kick, everyone just put the ball down, moved away from the ball, and they took the free kick. It was, from that aspect, and probably from a lot of other aspects. But from that aspect, it's a joy to watch. And I don't know. I'm sick of the petulance. I'm sick of the I don't know, just the ridiculousness of this time wasting. It's
But
not what we come to watch, guys.
do you think
That's not the
that's
entertainment.
do you think that the current game or the current mentality around the game is birthed by the influence of money? Because back then, like what they were playing for, like, £20 a week or something, and they still had full time jobs, and then they were playing football
Well, these
on the
guys were
side.
professionals, but I guess you have to be a certain level to be.
I think it was like maybe like 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s when it started to become like, okay, these guys can actually play football full time. But like 50s, 40s, 30s, they all had like full time jobs plus football. But like obviously now you're making a lot of these footballers are like on minimum like 100 grand a week, and obviously the managers are on like millions of dollars a year as well. So there's a lot of money riding on the fact that to stay up for promotion, to make top four, etc., etc. So like then using these little tactics to try and gain even like half a percentage of favor, then that's probably where it's all birthed. It's like, okay, well, if we're winning 1-0, we're the lesser opposition. Let's go down on the floor for a minute. We'll waste up a minute. Let's take 30 extra seconds to take a corner. If we get 2 corners, that's a minute right there, and so on. They try and find all these little loopholes, I suppose, to eat up time.
Yeah, the money. To your bigger point, the money for me increased the seriousness of it all.
Whereas before, it was more for the
scrutiny.
It was more for the glory back then.
And the so honor. Like with the seriousness and the scrutiny sort of increased with all the money coming in. Now, to your point about what you should do in that situation if you're a lesser team and you're winning 1-0, you would actually be criticized and be told that you don't have that nous, you didn't have that grit, you didn't have that sort of that intangible thing to see out that result, to go down, to use the dark arts. Like, you were too naive, you'd call it. And I'm sure I've been guilty of it in the past. And it's like, no, we shouldn't be saying that about this. We should be applauding the effort to try and win in at least somewhat the right way. You imagine they still have to defend and they have to sit deep. That's fine. But that's part of playing the game. That's a tactic. That's not a sort of gamesmanship thing. And the gamesmanship, I think, has gone too far. I think the seriousness has increased due to money. I wanted to go down a tangent of saying, is there a disconnect from society because of the money? But ultimately, I didn't want to go down there because I actually think a lot of what is wrong or coming into the game is we can see in the greater society. I always think that sport is just a microcosm of what we're seeing at the time. So I don't really want to go down that route. But in terms of the seriousness and the scrutiny being increased by money, I agree with that point for sure.
Yeah, and it's unless we start to like come down more harshly on it, using our ideas at least, maybe that will begin to fix itself, perhaps. But then maybe they'll find some other way to take advantage of the rules of the system somehow. I don't know.
I don't know how we go back from here with the money that's come into the game, because I think we all love the pros of it. Like, I love being able to watch pretty much any game in the world that I basically want to watch. But some of the cons of it, I think if we could just like, maybe progression is seeing that some things were good further back in time, and maybe some things need to go backwards, and we need to go backwards and going forwards for some things. But I don't know how that happens with so much money, and I just we saw the Mbappe. Did we touch on the Mbappe contract offer? My goodness.
No, I don't think that was brought to light. I think that was like brought to light maybe a day or two, or like after our last pod when we talked about transfers.
Yeah. What was it, 700 and something million for the wage and then 300 for the transfer? They wanted to spend a bill.
Yeah, like absolutely
Crazy.
insane. I think like you know how they always do the breakdowns of like how much he's making like per hour, per minute, per second, etc. It's like I think he was making. I think like under those wages from Saudi, it would have been like 1,300 pound or euro per minute. So it's like, yeah, it's like you go to like wash the dishes. It takes like 5 minutes. Like you're already making like almost 10 grand for washing the dishes.
I didn't rule it out either. I thought it was very unlikely, but I thought the fact that it was just for a year, and
Yeah,
his
like
dream has always been to go to Real Madrid. It's like, hey, why not go and get 700 million
has
euros for a year and then go to Real Madrid all fresh?
has it been resolved or is it still sort of ongoing?
I think his representative came out and said he has no intention of
Okay,
going to Saudi
but he's
Arabia.
still at a stalemate with PSG though because PSG he hasn't signed a new
Yeah, it
contract
seems
with
that
them.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they still want him to sign that new
yeah.
contract so they don't lose him for nothing, of course.
Do you have your whole little rant started off with Varane talking about workload? Do you have any added comments on the player workload, or was it mostly due to the was it mostly to do around the matches themselves being now like 100 minutes, 105 minutes because of
Exactly.
it, or was it
I
because of
think that was
the games? Because now they're adding. I'm not sure it's this. I think next year they're going to be adding. Is it 4 extra games to the Champions League per team?
yeah, of course. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think something like that. But yeah, I think the main takeaway was because of adding however long it might be, 15, 20, 25 minutes to games now. And look, on the workload point, I don't I don't see it from that aspect. That's why I didn't choose to hone in on that aspect of it, because during that time you're not gonna be working any extra because we're waiting for someone to get up off the floor or whatever we're waiting
Mm.
for. So look, like we saw it in the World Cup. I didn't hate it because it
I
was the
liked it.
first move. Yeah, it was the first move to try and stop this. But that was only for a tournament, and like, yeah, in all honesty, maybe from a selfish point, I don't think games need to be extended any longer. I find, look, I don't want to say I'm getting bored by the 60th minute because if a game's really good, it'll keep you engrossed to the end and if you're invested. But you need to somewhat be invested. I think for entertainment purposes, we don't need games any longer. I'm invested for maybe half an hour of most games. Some games will get me uninvested pretty quickly because we can have some really bad games and some after half an hour, like this is a game I want to watch through to the end. But for the most part, I think it's half an hour, and then after half an hour, and I'm starting to be like, what am I watching? I'm watching the same things here, and now we're just waiting for like a mistake or a moment of magic that comes from nowhere. So yeah, I don't know. I don't want to go all Florentino Perez on us and say that the TikTok generation just needs 20-minute games or whatever the hell he wanted us to play, but no, like I definitely don't want 2 hours of match time. I don't need that because all I'm going to be watching is someone on the floor for an extra 20 minutes. Give me a break.
Yeah. Well,
I think we should talk about some football now,
yeah,
though.
we should. But
Now
I'll just end on this. Like in regards to player workloads, we've seen players from other sports complain about it. Like for instance, NBA, they've been complaining about the fact that it's 82 games. Is it? And it's like, well, why do?
don't start me on the NBA.
Yeah,
It's so broken.
but like we've seen other sports as well complain about the amount of games. But then why is it? Why has it only been coming up over the last 10, 15 years? Like, why wasn't it ever discussed?
For me,
Like,
it's the intensity. It's what you touched on before. It's the added money. It's the added scrutiny. It's the added exposure.
but
And now we're demanding more from the players, and they have to
I'm
play at a greater intensity.
I'm curious though, like in regards, like we can obviously measure certain stats, like well, minutes played is obviously going to fluctuate a little bit, but like for instance, like we can measure the average distance run over a game. We can measure the sprint as well, the amount of sprints, like top speeds, all that stuff. So we can actually go back. I'm pretty sure we can go back on over old footage and analyze it. So it'd be interesting to compare, football from 20 years ago, how much they were running to compared to like how much they're running now and how many sprints they're making, etc., etc. But like I'll just finish with this one. I saw the other day, like, because it was interesting. Like they had a little bit of a workload topic or whatever, and they just posted a picture of like Michael Jordan's stats. I think in the 3 year spell I think it was from the first three-peat, he won. So first 3 years, like they won. The Bulls won 3 in a row titles. He won 3 finals MVPs. He won 2 league MVPs. He won 3 scoring titles. Got into 3 all-star teams, 3 all-defensive teams. And like these are all, like, they're just listing out his stats, and it's like 0 games missed. So he played every single game for 3 years straight. Like, luckily, like, he didn't have any injuries or anything like that, but like there wasn't any complaint about workload. And like we've seen, and like for most people that have seen the documentary on The Last Dance, Jordan even said, like, because he was like the figurehead of the NBA and like the face of the NBA, he found that it was his responsibility to turn up, especially to the away games, and show his face, because a lot of people were actually paying their tickets just to see him play, not necessarily to see their home team play that they support. So he found it as an obligation to show up and play.
Yeah, and that's definitely an admirable.
It's also like the certain morality or mentality of players and the way that they look at things. Like
it will be interesting, particularly in the NBA, to see what this next generation does, or whether that sort of aspect dies with LeBron, because I think LeBron's made it a point that he plays every game that he's pretty much available. There's no sort of, but you see other stars around the league, they're big into load management and just sitting out games. It's like, fuck, are we doing, guys? But I will also say in their defense, somewhat to the point, on the Michael Jordan point, who obviously never cheated the game, but the game was nowhere near as quick. I'm not saying that there weren't other cons, because I know you're going to bring up physicality, and I give you that. So you have to play through bumps and bruises, but we're not talking about playing through my muscles feel a bit iffy because I'm being asked to sprint a greater distance, because obviously the spacing in NBA is more at higher speeds. So I think the intensity of the game leads into that. And I'll also say Michael Jordan needed to take an 18-month sabbatical after that first three-peat.
Yeah, but that wasn't...
It killed him so much.
No, that wasn't necessarily because...
We can get into why we think, off the pod, why we think that would happen. But I think the toll, and I think he admits it in The Last Dance, in fact, that's why I bring it up. The toll of having to do that for 3 years, even back then where the games weren't the same intensity as they are now, even that took his toll, and he had to say, I can't play for the next year and a bit, until he came back and did it all again.
Yeah. Well,
so
we'll agree to disagree.
Well, I can guarantee you, if you watch those games back in the 70s and 80s and whatnot, they are not played at the... I'm not talking about basketball anymore. I'm talking about football. They're not played at the same intensity. I'll talk about basketball as well, but they're not played.
Football, definitely, but basketball, I've seen some footage of like the 50s and 60s, and like especially when it was white guys playing, and like, oh man, it's horrendous to watch. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna say what I'd rather watch, but because it's a dig at another gender of basketball. Let's just put it that way. But anyway, what do you want to talk about next, Caleb? What do you want to talk about next?
Well, I think we should hit on some football, actual on the pitch. Maybe not on the pitch, because we haven't seen anything of note, of consequence. Unless you want to say the Community Shield is of consequence.
Matti asked me about it, and he asked me what do I think of it? Like, this was before the game, going into it, and he asked me like what my thoughts on it and stuff. I just said like it's pretty much a glorified friendly, and it doesn't represent how your season will necessarily go. And I brought up last season, like Liverpool won it, and they struggled for 80% of the season, and then they managed to pull up their sleeves and make it pretty decent.
You know why
run.
though? You know why that is? Because once we won the Community Shield, we'd completed football under Klopp. And then all
No, you didn't.
players gave up.
No, because Klopp still needs to win the Europa League.
There you go. Maybe
Yeah,
this is the season.
maybe this is the
So
season.
last season was all for this.
But for instance, like City lost the Community Shield and then they went on to win the treble. Liverpool lose and
Yeah.
they don't even make top four. Or Liverpool win and they don't even make top four. And then also the season where Arteta's first season, I'm pretty sure we won the Community Shield against you guys. And then you guys go on to I think you guys struggled to make top four that season as well, but you still made top four. But we finished 8th. So then I was like, what, 4 seasons ago?
Oh, was that the post-COVID season?
When we won the FA Cup.
I think it was that season.
Yeah, so like
that was obviously the season we really struggled. That was the season where we were defending champions.
Yeah, so like
Verge.
the Community Shield doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's a slightly more serious friendly, but it's not really necessarily an indicator of how the season itself will go. But
What?
Yeah, I will say that considering it was against City, who are now our main rivals, as I was watching the game, I was like, okay, this is the most competitive that we've been against them. Granted, De Bruyne wasn't playing. Gvardiol just signed 2 days prior, so he wasn't playing. So we need to see how he fits in. But it was pretty much City's strongest starting 11. Minus, I think only De Bruyne was really missing, wasn't he? You'd say, from making it the strongest starting 11. This is pretty much Arsenal's strongest starting 11, except for Jesus not being the leading man up front. Instead, it was Kai Havertz. So I guess we can call it even on that. 10 out of 11 players starting to make it the strongest team. You could argue maybe Zinchenko instead of Timber, but I'm really liking Timber at left back. But I sort of could sense that, like, okay, this team is a year older. They're a year physically older in the right sense. Like, it's not like they're all 30-year-olds, so like they're on the downward trajectory. They're on the physical upward trajectory. So they're building a little bit of muscle up. They're getting a little bit stronger. They're being able to run, like, even if it's like 0.1 second quicker, or whatever. They're a little bit more mature now as well. And the matchup seems a lot more even now than what it was last year. So if this is an indicator of how mentally we're gonna face up against City, I think it's a good barometer of how the season should go for us, because considering we finished second, not first, probably that disappointment makes us kick on and try a little bit harder and rectify those mistakes. Similar to, I think, Arsene Wenger prior to the Invincible season. I'm pretty sure they finished second. They finished second like on the last day of the Premier League. I think they lost to Leeds, was it? And then the following season, I remember, I think it was Vieira on Henry talking about it. Like, the following season, they went on to then become invincible and he was saying that because of the disappointment, it made them try even harder and whatnot, and made them kick on. Whereas if they finished first, then they wouldn't have went invincible. They might have rested on their laurels a little bit, but that disappointment is what actually spurred them on. So maybe this will be that sort of that extra push that get them over the line this season.
That's going to be interesting to see. That's still obviously a question mark for me going forward. But what I take from the Community Shield and that point in general is the relevance is not high as you described at the start for those reasons. But the relevance might be high for the same reason we thought last season's relevance might be high. Because I think at this stage, and things can change, and let's just preface everything we're about to say with our simple quote: as facts change, our opinions will change.
Yeah.
So after 10 games, if I've watched Arsenal and they're inconsistent and they look young again, then our opinions will change. But the fact is, at this stage, I don't believe that will be the case. because I believe the relevance of the game that we watched in the Community Shield is that we were watching the best two teams in England play against each other. And I think that will be the case again this season. I think these two teams will be the best teams. And when we do our predictions, I'll give which way I think it will go. But yeah, in terms of what we watched in the game, that's what I think. That's what I think the takeaway is. Now, does that mean because Arsenal won it because they scored what was it, the 90th plus 11 minutes?
Something like
there's some good added time there.
Yeah, like 100th minute or whatever.
But like, yeah, I don't want to take anything away from that. Your question, well, not your question, but your statement about the disappointment fueling them. That will be interesting to see, because if I still want to point to one thing. Okay, we'll go with how macro. We'll take it macro. I'm going to take it macro because here's my overall point, and this isn't just the Premier League now. I'll expand it to Europe. For me, they all have little question marks, which we'll get into. But I think if you were to ask me, and I'll ask you as well, but if you were to ask me who I think the final four in the Champions League will be, and that's obviously without seeing the draw, without seeing if any of these teams get a group of death, without seeing if they get a really hard round of 16 or quarterfinal sort of thing, who I think the best four teams in Europe will be next season. I think Man City are definitely in there. I think Arsenal are probably... I don't want to rank them. Man City are number one. I think Arsenal are there. Now, this is taking away as well, like the experience factor from Arsenal making the final four. And we're going to talk about that when we talk about the weaknesses of these teams. But I would put them there, and I would also... And there's another weakness factor for this team, but I would put Barcelona there. And then as for who's fourth, I don't know. I think it becomes down to Bayern Munich or Real Madrid. And they are somewhat wild cards, and they are wild cards for me because what is the commonality between Manchester City, Arsenal, and Barcelona? Right up the top, the guy who doesn't play, he's on the bench. They all have Peps. They all have either Pep's or Pep disciples.
Yeah,
exactly. And those teams, you can see it in the way they play. They play with their box midfields. They all have their pros. They all have their cons to them. City are City, so when we talk about weaknesses, we'll probably talk about the least for them. The other two do have question marks that we'll see, but the continuity and the fact that they have that collective, that commonality up the top with the manager and the way they're playing, and the fact that no one has been able to solve it yet. And that's why it's always interesting when we see two of those teams play against each other and see who adapts, who blinks. Obviously, last season it was Pep who had to adapt and adapted the way he played against Arsenal. But no one can seem to solve these box midfields that they're creating. So for me, because those teams have been working together, they have fairly settled starting 11s. I know City's has had to change a little bit with Gundogan for Kovacic and now Guardiola coming in. But Guardiola, you got to think, will be an upgrade.
Yeah.
Arsenal's changed a little bit with Xhaka going out. Barcelona's is pretty stable, but that might be a weakness when we talk about them. But for me,
they
those
got rid
three
of Dembele,
teams,
so
I think Rafinha was better anyway. So I think he's the better player on that side. But so I think for me, those three are the most faith I have in those three teams. And then when we get to Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, we'll talk about why I think they're a toss-up. But they have an older generation of manager. And I'm interested why they're a wild card. They could be better. Either of those teams could be better than the three teams that I mentioned, or they could not be able to keep up tactically with those teams. And I'm interested to see what solutions Ancelotti and Tuchel come up with this season to see how they keep themselves relevant tactically. Because, this box midfield, teams can't solve it, and the players who played under Pep seem to be the best exponents of the box midfield. And I think it's definitely an emphasis. So I'm interested in who you think, taking away in a vacuum, who you just think the best four teams in Europe, if you had to say.
Like just visually. Just like watching them
Yeah,
visually,
visually,
just the eye test, just the eye test.
whatever you want to use, but we're taking out sort of the intangibles, the
Yeah.
experience, who you have to play to get there. We're taking away all of that.
Well, I'd have to agree with you with City and Arsenal, because I think even last season we're saying that for a lot of the season last season we're saying that Arsenal was like the best or like the second best after Napoli team in Europe, especially after City, before City had that run of like that massive run of form. So those two, I have to chuck Real Madrid in there. I just feel like I feel like they may be a year behind what Arsenal is doing, like where they're buying all these like 21, 22, 23-year-olds. But I feel like they may be a year behind them in their development, if you get me.
Maybe, but I would also say maybe the caliber of 21 and 22-year-olds they've bought, is maybe a little higher. So maybe they're not that far behind.
Yeah, and they also have like Kroos and Modric, who are like the best like teachers to, I guess, what is it, like handing over the, what's it called? Handing over the mantle, handing over the...
Yeah, the mantle, passing over the torch, whatever you want to say.
Yeah. So they're probably the two best people to get the torch from. And like it sort of reminds me of that picture with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where like there's a young Splinter, and then like the three young turtles, and then like 20 years or whatever later, it's like he's like an old man, and like they're all grown up. So it's like sort of like Modric and Kroos. Yeah, it reminds you sort of that.
Can I ask before you get off Real Madrid? Do you think they're a year away, or do you think they're a striker away from being that?
Man, if they got Kane.
It's not Kane. It's not Kane anymore.
I know, but if they got Kane, then I would say that they're ready this year.
They'll wait for Mbappe. There's no doubt that they'll wait for Mbappe.
He's already stated that he doesn't want to play as a number 9. So, like, where are you gonna fit him in?
Things change. Things will change. When he's playing with Vidi to his left, and maybe Rodrigo becomes awesome to his right.
Well, for instance,
and that midfield behind him.
Well, look at Thierry Henry. Like, I'm pretty sure Thierry Henry is like almost every of the generations coming through now, like of 20-year-olds. It's probably going to change, but he's like every French person's idol, like striker's idol, like Thierry Henry. And Mbappe's already made it clear Thierry Henry is his idol, and Thierry Henry started out on the left wing, and then Wenger transitioned him into the middle. So maybe Mbappe does that same sort of transition. Then he just needs a good manager to actually do it for him, and a good team as well.
And then before you go off Real Madrid again, if it's not the striker, is it not? I'm never going to disrespect Carlo Ancelotti by saying a better manager, but is it a different manager maybe they're away? Because when I look at the landscape and I see, to your point, this team of players who we have made it an emphasis to go young with, do we maybe not want to put a young manager in charge of them? Do we maybe not want to get someone who's out in the market, say who already has elite club experience at Bayern Munich?
Nagelsmann.
Yeah, maybe Nagelsmann in charge. He is probably the best young manager. Maybe not anymore because of the rise of Xavi and Arteta. Maybe we can have a discussion about that. But I would still put him as the best, given Champions League exploits and a league title behind him, and what he already did before he got that at Bayern. So I think that's and I don't want to disrespect Carlo Ancelotti. I don't think, but I think maybe this summer would have been the right time to get a Nagelsmann in with this young group of players, and let's start working, and we'll start building, and then we can
what about
put that cherry on top.
De Zerbi would be an interesting
one. I don't want to say Nagelsmann is not confrontational, but De Zerbi seems to be next level, sort of. Not he's confrontational, maybe even erratic, is what I want to say about De Zerbi.
In the Conte mold.
Yeah, I don't know if he's quite Real Madrid. So especially after you've gone from Ancelotti, and then you've got De Zerbi in there, whoa, this volcano in there. So yeah, and I think he needs a bit of See, none of them make so much more sense, man. He already has the top level experience. He's been out of football for a few months, so he's had time to reflect on that and learn from it. And I know Real Madrid are maybe half a level above Bayern Munich, but Bayern Munich are about as close as you can get to a Real Madrid in world football. So
Yeah, I think.
I don't know. For me, that's the obvious one, given
I,
that he has no job at the moment.
yeah, I think what I feel like there's maybe like a like Modric and Kroos are probably like the connectors between like the age gap between Ancelotti and the rest of the players.
Yeah, yeah,
So you
for
have like
sure.
you have those like two or three, four senior players that, and like once they leave, I think then it might be a good idea to bring in a younger coach who can probably connect with the younger group a little bit more.
Yeah, that'll be interesting
That'll
to
be
see
interesting,
what
yeah.
they do.
But then again,
Mm.
Carlo Ancelotti's son is like an assistant coach there, so like maybe he's also like that sort of connector with the team.
I'd be surprised if he wasn't. I
Yeah,
think everything I've seen, obviously just from watching telecast, but he seems to take a lot more of the hands-on sort of stuff.
yeah,
Or Carlos sits back and manages a bit more. So
yeah. Just raises
that
his
is
eyebrow.
interesting. So you have Real Madrid as with Arsenal and City.
I probably
So
put
who's your
Bayern ahead of
last one?
Barca. I don't
Yeah,
think
I
Barca
can
are
see
quite
that.
there yet.
I, I think if we're going to stick on Barca, we'll talk about maybe their weakness. There's two weaknesses for me. There's one of the centre back positions because I think Jules Koundé and Ronald Araujo are fantastic, borderline world class. Maybe one of them is world class, but but who plays next to him? I know Christensen did a good job last season. I'm worried that I still saw Eric Garcia in preseason. I'm worried that I still saw Marcos Alonso in preseason. I don't like that position for them. But everywhere else on the park, barring maybe I don't. See, Oriol Romeo could be okay because he performs a certain function that maybe Barcelona need, and he can just stick to that function and never have to go outside of it to influence a game like he did at Southampton. Um, but it's I don't know. Is he a top level? I don't think he's a top level holding midfielder. So there'll be questions over there, but I'm not writing him off yet. But everywhere else on the park, I really like Barcelona. I like Balde as that sort of interchangeable sort of left wing back more. I like Kunde and Araujo on the other side playing as sort of two of a back three. I guess that helps out whoever plays next to them. Still, if they can upgrade there, that'd be perfect. And I think they'd be really strong. Goalkeeper, I obviously love. And then Pedri. Let's not forget Pedri. We haven't talked about Pedri for a while because he got injured, and Barcelona kept rolling to the title last season. And then when he came back, it was sort of irrelevant because Barcelona were out of all European competitions and they were already so far ahead in the league that it was already won. So I think this guy's got to go up to a next level. The guy he needs to look at for me is Musiala, and he has to tell himself, I got to be better than that guy every season because I think those two are so easy to compare to each other. And I think Musiala got the better of him last season. I think he was the better player, even though I did like Pedri and I did like his emergence with a few crucial goals at the start of the season in 1-0 wins, which Barcelona did so well last season. I think that will drop back down to earth. I don't think they'll be as good defensively this season as they were last season, but we're not asking him to be at that level. We're just asking him to still be at a very high level, which I think they can do. Their continuity, they all know how to play. Gavi next to Pedri in that box with Frankie de Jong just behind it, and obviously Romeo maybe there as well as the Busquets replacement. Lewandowski up front, Rafinha on one wing. I don't know, man. I really like that team. It's just a question now: can they go to the next level when they play good teams this season? And question on Romeo, question on that left centre back position. And I didn't like seeing in preseason in their last game that Ronald Araujo, after 30 minutes, made one sprint and had to come off the pitch. So if he gets a reputation for being a bit more injury prone as his career goes, and he is Barca's best defender, and if they lose him for any prolonged period of time, then that puts any goals that they have in jeopardy. So they're the question marks on Barcelona, but ultimately I just thought their continuity and their knowledge of what they're doing tactically is made me put them higher than definitely Real Madrid, because Real Madrid are going to have to reinvent without Karim Benzema. And that's why I'm interested to see what Ancelotti does. It looks like he's favouring a narrow diamond at the moment. That's so tough. I love a narrow diamond, but it feels very Milan 04, 05 to me rather than Real Madrid in 2023. And Bayern, what I hated watching about them in preseason is that Tuchel doesn't know his centre-back partnership, and he still thinks it might be Upamecano. And I'm here to scream it to him. It's not Upamecano, man. It's just not. I'm so sorry to him, but it's not him. He can't be one of your bedrocks there. It has to be De Ligt. It has to be, obviously, Kim and Jay, who they brought in. But on paper, if that team gels, I dare say, I think Bayern Munich have the highest ceiling in Europe.
And if they
get it right.
And if they get Harry Kane as well.
Of course.
Doesn't look like.
But I do like the addition of Konrad Laimer into that midfield next to Joshua Kimmich, and that frees up Musiala a lot. And then obviously,
I heard that Kimmich might be leaving actually because apparently he has like a 50 million euro release clause.
Yeah, and I heard the links to Manchester City early in the window, but I saw links to
Arsenal.
Oh, that would be nice.
I'll take that for 50 mil.
For 50 mil as well. What a bargain.
Well, why doesn't Liverpool go for him?
We'll talk about Liverpool. I don't love what's happening at Liverpool. What's not happening.
Personally, I'd put Bayern ahead of Barca though. I just feel like they're more ready. I feel like Barca's project is still kicking on. I still don't know what they're like. For instance, like we know. I know I keep comparing to Arsenal because I watch them a lot as well, but like we know the profile of player that Arsenal is trying to always recruit. Like they're always getting like 21, 22, 23, 24-year-olds. Like the 3 signings that they made this season, Declan Rice is 24, I think Kai Havertz is 23, and Timber is 21. So it's like, okay, and he fits into the rest of the team with Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard, and I think Ben White is 24, 25 as well. Saliba as well. So like the profile of the team is like 21 to 25-year-old players, and then filled in with like a couple of older players. Barca, I don't know, it just feels like I don't know what's the profile of player that they're trying to build the team around yet.
For me, it's got to be Pedro.
It feels like they got a little bit of everything, and they're sort of all over the place still. I still can't see it. I know that they should be building around Pedri and Gavi, but yeah, like I can't see the project. Not as clearly as I can see the project at Real Madrid as well. I can see the project clearly there. I can see it clearly at Arsenal. City, I don't know, the project is always to buy the best players regardless of age, really.
I don't know. That feels unfair because they're always smart. It's never really this. Smart. I mean, Guardiola's got to be their. Guardiola's not their record signing because obviously they got Grealish, but like how
I think he's the most expensive centre back now.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think we said this a couple of weeks ago. It never really feels like City make these kind of huge signings. I guess they've made 2 in 3 years now, but they didn't make one last season. This type of money, they're always around that 50 million. They could always. They seem to be smart with it.
I wasn't criticizing them, but I was like saying
that. No, I know, but it's just an odd one because like they do get the best. They got Kovacic. Was Kovacic a free?
No, I think it was like 30 mil, 20 mil.
Yeah, 30 mil. That's pretty good. But he is injury prone, so that'll be interesting to see what happens there. They haven't got any fullbacks, so it looks like they're doubling
Walker
down.
Is staying from as far as I've heard. Guardiola took him out to a nice dinner, is what I heard.
That's great. But just for the record, I would disagree with what you said about Barcelona, and that's why I put them in the top 3 because I think they're actually a lot more clear with their vision than Real Madrid.
I can see the vision in terms of the way that they want to play, but I can't necessarily see it in their recruitment policy.
Yeah, okay, that's all right. That's fine. They have. It looks like they've targeted smaller La Liga clubs with Romeo, and I think they also got a winger. I don't know. I can't remember his name, but I saw him playing in preseason from another. So it's not that crazy sort of spending that they were
Yeah,
doing
like
last
four
season.
hundred mil on 3 players. I think
Yeah.
Griezmann, Dembele, and Coutinho 400 mil, and they sell them for 90 mil. It's no longer
And,
that, which
and
is good.
also, also for the record, I am fully prepared to have Real Madrid and Bayern Munich above Barcelona in my rankings after 8 to 10 weeks, because I think their ceiling is really high. I just have more question marks around those two than I do about Barcelona right now, so that's why I have them in the top three. But I think we landed on the same 5 teams, didn't we? Really?
Pretty much.
And I guess we've went through the weaknesses of them all. I guess Arsenal is that question mark about what's the character like when the season gets really nitty gritty, because that youth is great to a point, and then what does it become? Like you said, does that determination from last season, does the disappointment from last season spur them to the next level? Or are we looking at Martin Odegaard and saying, I need a better captain for a team that's going to win
I
things?
like him as a captain. He seems
I
very level headed.
I don't want to take too much from preseason, but we saw it last season as well. I think from a corner in an important game. I can't remember against who he lost his man. But in preseason again, he turned his back in the wall and they conceded a goal against Barcelona. And again, I'm not saying that's the be all and end all, but I don't want to see my captain doing that. And that can't happen in key moments in a season. So I'm fully prepared to be at the end of the season to say Arsenal were the best team in the league. They deservedly won the league, and Martin Odegaard is the right captain for him. But I'm also prepared to be sitting here and saying I need to be looking at a Patrick Vieira. I need to be looking at a Martin Keown as my leader. I need to be looking at that hard nose, that guy who gets us through those tough moments. So that's the question mark for them. City, the question mark is still tactically. And the question mark is, does doubling down on what they did last season work again? And as always, because this is a team that won everything last season, how does he? How does Pep remotivate them to go again?
That's the bigger question for me.
But he's done it for 5 years
Yeah.
now, so I don't know.
Yeah, but the thing is,
Crazy.
the 5 years they've kept on winning the Premier League, but this is the first time that they've won the Champions League. This is the first time that they've completed football essentially, and throw in the Club World Cup in the middle of the season. That's going to be a bit of a disruptor. So that could derail their Premier League season at least, but not necessarily their Champions League season.
You're still on this. You were on it for half a season last season. It's like, could this disrupt their Premier League campaign?
We sort of agreed that it happened. That's the reason why Real Madrid got disrupted, because I think they were going pretty well and going toe to toe up until pretty much the World Cup and Club World Cup, because then they had that as well, and then Barcelona just sort of ran away with it after that in January.
Yes, City might need a few more players in there, especially with the Kovacic injury concerns. And they've lost Mahrez. They might need another. They don't need a first choice, and that's where it becomes tricky. Like it's almost easier to sign first choices. It's going to cost you more, but if you're Manchester City, you can do it. But the second choices, the ones to back up, they always seem to be harder. But who knows? Maybe Cole Palmer comes in. He's a good replacement. Maybe Rico Lewis gets better and is a good option in central midfield in that box. Maybe Calvin Phillips comes on. So maybe we're not talking about depth.
Hang on. We didn't mention Gundogan for Barcelona. But
course,
you know what I read?
Course,
apparently, in his contract, he has an option to become a free agent again if they don't register him by the 13th. They haven't registered him yet.
That's smart by his people to put that in the clauses. But when you say Gundogan as well, when we're talking about the tactical ways that these teams play in terms of Arsenal, Barca, and City, I must say I think Romeo maybe brings everyone's level down a bit, but in terms of the box, I think Barca might have the best box out of any of those teams. Arsenal's is really good as well, but Kai Havertz brings everyone's levels down a bit. Pedri, Gavi, Gundogan, and Frankie de Jong. Well, either Gundogan or Frankie de Jong.
I don't think Havertz should be playing as the 8, so he shouldn't be in that. He should be playing as a second striker, really. Like,
Well, but either way, he's part of the box. He's part of
yeah,
that attacking midfielder, that eight, and
mm.
then the two pivots, whether it be a fullback coming in or whatever it is. So yeah, I think Barca, Arsenal. I don't know. They're all really strong boxes, aren't they? Even without De Bruyne playing and Julian Alvarez playing as one of the attacking midfielders. But yeah, I think they're. It's interesting that we agree that they're the only five teams we have in the discussion for that top four in Europe.
if if Napoli's manager stayed and if they didn't lose Kim, then I would have put Napoli
They're
in there because they're a bit of a question
they are
mark.
an afterthought, aren't
They're a
they, at the
question
moment? But
mark
they're
at
a
the moment.
question mark. Absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah. I think they signed a centre back from Brazil, so it'll be interesting. These are the waters that these teams need to swim in, so it'll be interesting to see if he's a revelation, much like Kim. Kim came out of nowhere. Let's not forget. So if they could do that, you're right though. They haven't lost anyone else, so maybe they shouldn't be as much of an afterthought as I'm
But
putting them
losing your
as.
manager is massive, I feel, because then there's going to be like a massive change in tactics in the locker room in terms of that connection between the manager and the players, especially considering the players just won a league title. Can the manager get all the players on board with his tactics and his way of and his style and his coaching? Because he's trying to win over a team that won the league. He's not trying to win over a team that came second or third. Because I feel like that
Yeah.
would be easier if they didn't win the league. And it's like, okay, well, guys, I want to take you to the next level. I want to win the league with you guys. If you listen to me, if you follow me, we can do that. Now it's like, well, we need to try to win the league again. And the players were like, well, we won the league last year doing this. Why should we follow you and believe you? They might have that question in the back of their head,
It could
especially
be, and
especially if
if
things
results go, yeah,
especially if things don't go their way in the first like
yeah,
10 games or
exactly,
something.
exactly right. So they are a big
Who,
question
who
mark. I
is their
think that's
manager?
why
Is that being confirmed or?
I haven't seen anything. I might have missed it, but I haven't seen anything for that one. So that. I think that's as big a point as Kim Min Jae in terms of the question marks around Napoli. Also, it's Napoli, and it was kind of unexpected that they were as good as they were last season. So maybe they come back down to earth. Even though Inter made the Champions League final, they've obviously lost their goalkeeper. They lost Milan Skriniar as
They
well.
lost Brozovic.
So and
That's a
Brozovic as well.
massive
So
loss.
it's right. It's right that they are an afterthought as well. I think PSG are an interesting one because
Who's their
I
manager?
think it's Luis Enrique,
Oh yeah,
and I
that
think
could be
I think
interesting.
it's the thing is there's another guy who's not a Pep disciple, but he did come to Barcelona after Pep, and he obviously
But
knows a lot of the
but
workings
he
and
also
plays a
played.
similar
He played
style.
at Barca with. I think he played with Pep.
I think you might be right,
I think that they might have
but
had a year or
obviously he
two
knows.
crossover.
I think the style is the same, and I think you
Yeah,
see that tactically they play the same. The reason I don't put them in the same bracket as Arsenal, Man City, and Barca at the moment is because if I look at the box that they're using, it's not on the same level as those other three teams. When you look at they've got Ugarte in there, who's obviously the new signing. He looks alright, neat and tidy, holding midfielder, maybe better balance. But then Fabian Ruiz always flatters to the sea for me. Vitinha is a so-so player, nice, neat and tidy, not much more. Um, what's the boy's name? Emery. I want to say Unai, but I know obviously it's not Unai Emery. But the young boy in there, he might be a bit of an X factor, so he might answer a question in there. But compared to the other three teams that I mentioned, their box just isn't as good. But their defense is really strong. If Marquinhos has a bounce back season, Donnarumma's one of the best goalkeepers in the world. Obviously, Marquinhos can be one of the best centre backs in the world. Lucas Hernandez, I think, is a good signing in terms of the tactical way that they want to play as a third centre back. Yeah, I think there's probably more balance to their front line as well now. I think Asensio is actually a cheeky good signing
I
for
reckon
them on a
that's
free.
a decent signing. Yeah.
Yeah, he looked really good for Real every time he had to play, and in preseason he's looked really good for PSG as well. So he might be a really good sign. And obviously, anything I've said of PSG in preseason has been without Mbappe. So if they get him back on the pitch, then they could look even more formidable. So They could be a wild card. I don't know if I'm. Yeah, I'm not prepared to put them in the discussion with the other five just yet, but I think they're probably loitering around there. And I think we should probably shift our attention back to. Well, I mean, Atletico. I don't like their signings. I think they were primed to go to the next level, and what they've brought in is Soyanchu and Azpilicueta. And I'm like, what the fuck? Well, they've also made the key permanent signing of Antoine Griezmann, who was the best player in Europe for the second half of last season. I don't know about Atletico. I thought they were primed to maybe go and really challenge Barca and usurp Real Madrid as the chief challenger to Barcelona this season, but man, I'm unconvinced by what they've done in the window. So they might be relying on their top. Too much reliance on Coco there. Too much maybe reliance on Jimenez, who is maybe injury prone at this point. Yeah, but if Griezmann is as good as he was last season, they got a chance of challenging. But yeah, I wouldn't put them. I'd put them below PSG for sure. And then I think we should bring it all the way back to the Premier League now. Well, it's interesting. We've only got two clubs that we'd put in that bracket for the Premier League, because I think we could probably both agree that we wouldn't put United, Newcastle, Liverpool, or Chelsea anywhere near those top five that we mentioned. And I guess that makes for an interesting Premier League season. Well, top four race anyway.
Yeah, the biggest one that I'm disappointed by probably is Liverpool, because I think the last time we spoke there was rumors that Fabinho and Henderson would leave, and then they ended up leaving. I know you guys brought in McAllister and no
Soboslai.
but it's like, okay, well, but my original thinking was, okay, well, you're bringing them in to add to Henderson and Fabinho, but now they're becoming replacements, it seems,
Yeah.
for those two. But then you've also lost. I know Oxlade-Chamberlain. I know he's barely played any minutes last season. He's always injury prone. He's left, right? Milner's left.
I think Naby's left.
Yep. Tiago, is he rumored to go?
Injured all the time.
Or he's either rumored to go or he's injured all the time. But like, you had more outgoings, especially outgoings from the midfield, than incomings. So, and then like, you guys are fighting over like a £5 million fee with Lavia because Southampton are holding out for either 45 or 50 mil, and you guys are offering 40 mil. So it's like, why? I know, and you guys are renovating your stadium or whatever, but even then, like, Lavia is what, like 20 years old, so like,
yeah. I think he could be a good player, but he's not the answer right now.
I know, but like, it's just so strange.
And you've only talked about midfield. You haven't even talked about. We probably should have looked at a maybe not replacement, but someone for competition for Virgil, because if Virgil's no good again this season and Konate's injured all the time, who the hell do we have there? And then there's no right back either.
Well, last year
there's one player who could.
Well, last year I was advocating for you guys to really go hard for Guardiola, but the fact that you guys didn't make Champions League, that really fucked you guys up.
Well,
because if you guys made Champions League, I think you probably could have tried to get Guardiola, but I doubt you would have got him. But like, at least you could have tried, and you could have tried early.
Well, once we weren't willing to blow the budget on Jude, I think it was, you're not going to blow the budget on Guardiola. I think if you gave me a choice between who to blow the budget on out of those two, I'd still choose Bellingham over Guardiola, to be fair. But yeah, Liverpool, unimpressive. No answers at right back. We're going to try the box thing. Our box isn't too bad, but our defending is terrible. Virgil van Dijk needs to become superhero Virgil van Dijk again for that to work. There's no holding midfielder. And the imbalance as sort of a right centre-back. I don't like Konate having to defend too much space out there, so I don't really love that. I think maybe there's a couple of, maybe not answers, but players. Well, one that I'm thinking of, obviously I've said Benjamin Pavard so much in the past. I think he could be a good answer. think they're quoting around 30 mil. I don't know if Bayern still need him, to be quite honest. So I don't know why we're not at least looking at that one. I think Juan Foyt from Villarreal would fit that profile perfectly as the sort of third centre back who can defend the wide areas. He's used to playing. He has played right back a lot, and he seems to be more of a right back nowadays anyway. So I think he could be perfect there. He somewhat knows the Premier League, haven't played at Tottenham before. I don't think he'd be too expensive, so I think he's at least worth looking at. But the Joker in the pack, and the one who sits there, who still sits there in the Premier League, playing in West London, and he could be the answer to at least Liverpool and Chelsea sort of problems, and maybe some clubs around Europe. But João Paulinho is still at Fulham. And I'm very surprised by that one because I really rate him as a holding midfielder, as a destroyer. And if we're going to lose Fabinho, and we did get over 40 million euros for Fabinho, so that's not a bad price in terms of transfer wage. I think you could nearly get João Paulinho for about that price. I think his market value on transfer market is 40 million, so you'd have to pay a bit more than that, obviously. A bit of Premier League tax, maybe 60, 65 million. He isn't the youngest, I will say that, but he is, for me, the most notable answer in that holding midfield role. And I think that goes for Chelsea as well, because I think I look at Chelsea and I don't think
they got their eyes set on Caicedo.
Yeah,
and
I know.
that seems like it's just a wasteful pursuit, in all honesty. At least this season.
It might not be, because
Brighton now want 100 mil apparently.
That would be ridiculous if they went that high and paid that much when João Paulinho is sitting there. I do agree, but if you take away the price tag, and if you look at a midfield of Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez playing as a double pivot, I don't know, it's pretty good. And Poch can mold that into something pretty nice with the fullbacks that he's got. Look, the point about Chelsea as well, they don't have European football. So when I'm talking about Koulibaly being a big loss for them, which people aren't going to see and we'll never know now, maybe he won't be a big loss for them, because maybe Thiago Silva just having to play once a week for the most part for the whole season. Maybe he could do that. And last season he looked as good as ever. So if he could get through this season injury free, if him and Levi Colwell could strike up a good partnership, goalkeepers maybe a question mark. Is it Arrizabalaga? Is it David Raya? I would say it should be Raya, to be fair. I'm never convinced by Arrizabalaga. I think he's a small presence in that goal. But the rest of Chelsea.
How come you guys didn't go for Tielemans and raided or tried to raid some of the teams that went down? Tielemans would have been good.
That's another good team to bring up as well when we're talking about a top 4 race, because I think easily if we finish on Chelsea, I think if Nkunku stays fit for the whole season, I'd put Chelsea above
He already
Liverpool.
has an injury, and I think it's a long-term one as well.
Is it a long-term?
I think so.
I didn't know.
I think it is.
That's devastating, because he is such a good footballer. I don't know. Chelsea and Liverpool look like, I don't think their seasons will be as disastrous as last season, even though Liverpool did finish 5th in the end of the day, and maybe we can outscore teams and get ourselves back into the top 4. But I think, well, we haven't talked about the teams who finished 3rd and 4th, but just finishing up on the teams who didn't finish in that top 4.
Nkunku requires knee surgery, so that's going to be
surgery.
Yeah, if you need surgery, I'm guessing you need at least 6 months if it's surgery.
If it's bad, yeah. So
yeah,
that's devastating. He would have been such a good addition to the Premier League, but now I guess we don't get to see him for a while. But yeah, the other contenders for that top 4, I think we have to sort of say Villa have positioned themselves to be the best of the rest, haven't they? And I'm interested with Villa, because we haven't talked about Tottenham either, and Tottenham for me they will look better this season because Ange is in charge. They might have a revenge season from Son Heung-min, which might help them, but they have bought no goalkeeper. They've bought one centre back who I don't know all that much about from Wolfsburg, Van de Ven. I don't know if he's the answer. I don't know if Tottenham have an answer for what they can attract at centre back, to be quite honest. But who knows? Maybe Harry Kane might play another season for them, and that instantly makes them a better team. And if he gets more support and they're better to watch, and they maybe get a bit of momentum behind them, who knows? They maybe could be at least in with a shout for competing for the top four. I think. Well, would you take Tottenham or would you take Villa at this present moment?
Tottenham, I think
Villa, obviously.
I
Yeah,
think
go on,
Tottenham have the better starting 11, I'd say, player-wise. Not by much, but I think player profiles, I think they have a slightly better starting 11. The only thing is the difference in manager. Like, you got Unai Emery there, who's very, very experienced. And Andrew, you don't quite know what he's going to offer to the Premier League yet, or how he's going to handle it. That's a bit of a question mark. I think, and Villa had a very strong end to the season last year, so I think I'd take Villa at this point.
I don't necessarily disagree. I think I would dispute maybe. I think Villa might have a stronger starting 11. Now, if you put Harry Kane and Son Heung-min in Tottenham's starting 11, maybe that just bumps up the level to where they maybe just have the edge. But in terms of all round the pitch, considering the signings of Pau Torres, considering I'm very interested to see what kind of Diego Carlos comes back after his knee injury last season. Obviously, they signed him from Sevilla last season, at the start of last season, and he was part of the second best defensive partnership in La Liga in Sevilla with Jules Koundé. So if they get a good performance out of him, they've obviously got a World Cup winning goalkeeper, so there's no worries there, unlike Tottenham. They got a pretty stable midfield. I think John McGinn is starting to show what he can do. Douglas Luiz, good enough. But the one who I'm really fascinated by who Villa signed is Moussa Diaby. I can't believe Aston Villa got Moussa Diaby. That's crazy for me. And I think he's a club record signing. I think they paid £51 million for him. Now, I'm very interested. So Diego Carlos is one question at one end of the pitch. Moussa Diaby is the other question for me, because while I absolutely love Moussa Diaby, the player that I saw at Leverkusen, we have seen it before with players who go from the Bundesliga to the Premier League. There seems to be a Bundesliga tax. And Jadon Sancho is the Timo Werner, whoever else you want to put in that bracket. I hope that this guy doesn't fall under that bracket. I would say he's good enough, but I thought Timo Werner was at least dynamic enough to overcome it with his pace, but he looks slow in the Premier League. So if we see Moussa Diaby come over to the Premier League and look small and not look quick, then, oh man, I'd hate to say it, but that thing becomes true about the Bundesliga tax. But I hope that he's good enough to overcome it. But if he is, then Liverpool have a serious challenger in Aston Villa now added to the mix. So look, I'm prepared. I'm prepared for Villa to be in with a shout come near the end of the season. I'm very prepared for that narrative. Another narrative I'm kind of sneaky prepared for is Unai Emery maybe holding this team back a bit, because last season they didn't, like, we're not talking about Villa as one of the better, at least starting 11s in the Premier League. This season, I think we might be talking about them in that regard. We're already asking the question about, would you take Tottenham or Villa? So they're already up to that level. Maybe if Liverpool and Chelsea don't start well, we're talking about would you take Villa or would you take Liverpool or Chelsea? So they have talent there. Unai Emery, you said it yourself when Liverpool beat Villarreal in that semi-final, that he held back Villarreal when they were making that comeback somewhat. That's another sneaky narrative. Now, I don't want to disrespect Unai Emery because, like you said, he did a fantastic job when he came to Villa last season. But I am prepared for that narrative at some point of the season if Villa are maybe not performing to what these signings suggest that they maybe can perform to.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how they go, but I do think that considering how they ended last season, they should kick on and continue with this season, and there's just so
Yeah.
many question marks regarding. There's too many question marks regarding Liverpool, regarding Chelsea, and regarding Tottenham.
Okay,
Chelsea and Tottenham more
yeah,
so because of the manager changes. So
let's go one higher then and finish up our sort of Premier League somewhat preview. And so we have all those questions about the challenges, but what about the teams who finished in the top four?
like
In the two
Newcastle and
Uniteds, in
United.
Newcastle and that. Yeah, what do you think about their prospects coming in?
Well, Newcastle brought in another midfielder to support Guimaraes and another quality midfielder in Tonali, who I would have loved to have at Arsenal. So I rate him. So that's going to be really that's beefed up that team. They got rid of Saint Maximin. Who did they bring in to replace
Harvey
him?
Barnes.
Harvey Barnes.
Yeah, they brought in Harvey Barnes.
Yeah. So another Leicester signing.
Oh, just before you go on, I just want to add a little thing to the Tottenham thing.
They got Madison.
Interesting. They got Madison in, but they also have Lo Celso back.
Yeah.
And I think Lo Celso's better than Madison anyway, so that one might be a bit of a waste of money. But anyway,
Maybe,
let's go back to the United. So I just wanted to add that in.
And did they sign a centre back or a left back as well? I
They signed a right back in Livramento from Southampton.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about left back. I haven't seen left back.
Has Ward-Prowse been signed by anyone, or is he still at Southampton?
I think they're still talking about that one.
Okay.
I think West Ham are chiefly.
Yeah,
being
West
talked
Ham, I
about
think.
for him.
So like Newcastle, I feel have gotten stronger. It's just
Newcastle are a weird one.
the question there is: will they be able to? Do they have the squad that's big enough to compete in the Champions League and in the Premier League? Because last year they didn't have any European football.
Newcastle for me, their question is because I think they will have the squad if they answer yes to the question: is the momentum, is the feel-good factor, is the Eddie Howe sort of environment that is created, is it good enough to keep progressing the players that they have and the players that they've brought in? Now, if the answer to that is yes, then they will have the squad to compete on all fronts. Because if the answer to that is yes, then players like Jacob Murphy will be really good, Livramento will be really good coming in, Tonali will be really good, Harvey Barnes will be really good, Almiron will continue to be really good, Callum Wilson, Isak, all of these players will continue on their progression, and Dan Burn and Sven Botman and Fabian Schär, all of these players and Nick Pope, these players who maybe didn't think that much of before last season, they'll continue to be these players that we say, hey, they're really good players. But as soon as the answer to that becomes no, as soon as the answer to that becomes the crowd isn't motivating them in the same way, the momentum isn't quite there the same way, the Eddie Howe environment isn't working to the same level, if that ever becomes no, then they'll drop off badly, I think, because the quality of players on paper, I don't think, like, before last season, we wouldn't have said is that great. So that's the question mark around Newcastle for me. And for me, Newcastle have replaced Liverpool as that kind of club in the Premier League at the moment. The club who has the city galvanised, who has this crazy momentum behind them, who is getting the best out of these somewhat players like Sadio Mane and Mo Salah, we did not think were world beaters before they came to Liverpool. And then this whole environment and everything that was created there sort of snowballed into what it became. And I think Newcastle are a better prospect at doing that than Liverpool right now. So I think they've replaced them as that sort of force in the league. And I'm hoping that the answer to that question that I posed is yes, because I would love to see Newcastle continue to roll. And, well, maybe I wouldn't love it because it's to the detriment of Liverpool, but I would love it. But if the answer to that is yes, and I honestly, right now, I've seen no indication to suggest why the answer to that wouldn't be yes. I might like to see them sign a centre back to partner next to Sven Botman, because I think Fabian Schär is touch and go for me. But yeah, do we put them above Manchester United?
Nah, I don't think so. I think United have.
Do you like the budget Haaland signing, the Rasmus Højlund? What was it, 60?
Yeah, but isn't he
It was
injured?
pushing up.
He's come in as an injured striker, so he's gonna miss the
Has he
first.
really?
He's gonna miss the first couple of games, from what I've heard. They've gotten rid of. I think they've gotten rid of Maguire, at least verbally. They've lost De Gea.
Verbally means shit.
I think
The
they. I think they.
cockroaches
I think they
stay.
have an. I think they have a verbal agreement with West Ham. So
Yeah.
it's up to Maguire to sort out his personal terms with them. Have they signed anyone else? They signed Onana, obviously, as well.
Mason Mount as
Mason
well.
Mount. I think another year under Ten Hag, another Pep disciple. I don't know how much of a disciple he is, because I think he only coached the 20,
Tactically,
21s.
it doesn't look.
He coached the
Yeah, it doesn't
21s
look the
while Pep was at Bayern. So like he didn't work directly under him. He just worked at the same time at the same club, and I don't know how much direct working relationship the head coach of the senior team has with the under 21s coach. Generally, from my understanding, is that they leave them alone, and then they just say, okay, I want to bring up a player or two, but otherwise they just leave them alone. So Pep disciple, I'm not sure how true that is. I'm just thinking, like, Newcastle or Manchester. They haven't really.
Tough one.
They haven't really brought in anyone that's like, if they for instance brought in Harry Kane instead of Højlund, I'd put them definitely. I'd probably even put them like maybe to challenge for second.
Yeah, that would be fair, but they didn't.
Yeah.
I think. Look, my.
Nah, I think I still
was,
put Newcastle ahead of them. I think they're a better team. Like,
yeah, there was nothing to split them last season, and I think it will be tight between these two next season. Well, I don't know what I think right now. I need to see some games, to be fair. But as we sit here now, that's kind of what I think. I am prepared for both sides of the coin with Manchester United. I am prepared to say, like we did for a lot of last season, that they might be hanging on to the coattails of the top two. I'm prepared for that narrative, and I'm prepared maybe for them to be a little bit closer than they were last season. I think Onana is a tactical upgrade on De Gea. I don't know if he's a goalkeeping upgrade, but he is a tactical one in terms of what Ten Hag wants to do. I think Mount is a slight upgrade on Eriksen just because of his mobility, but I think they pretty much do the same thing. The big question mark is Rasmus Højlund up front. And this is a guy who has not scored double-digit goals in a Big Five league in Europe. And he is meant to be the saviour. That is a lot of pressure on a young man's shoulders. And I've seen glimpses. I've seen the talent. He is very young, though, and he is still very raw. And let's not forget that his sort of bigger brother in Erling Haaland is still very raw as well. So there is a chance that he just comes in and he scores maybe 20 goals in the league in his first season just because he is a physical specimen and he can still bully people and he gets a little bit hot. But his game is nowhere near complete. So there is a chance that if he doesn't hit the ground running and he struggles for goals, that we're talking about 60 million for this guy. And then we start to bring up, well, he didn't even get into double digits for Atalanta last season. Like he didn't start the season as their number 9. He was brought in halfway through the season. He had a good second half of the season, and we've seen this with players like Krzysztof Piatek, with Dusan Vlahovic. These players who have a really good half season in the Serie A, they get snapped up by a bigger club, and then where is it? Where's that form? So I don't want to rain all over Manchester United's parade. For Højlund's sake, because I think he can be a good player, I'm hoping that this doesn't happen. But I'm not ruling out that narrative. I'm not ruling out sitting here after 15, 20 games and saying he hasn't been the striker that United needed. He hasn't been adding enough goals, and United maybe look... The good thing is I think United can't look worse than they did last season. Yeah, and that's the good thing. So they've heightened their ceiling without necessarily lowering their floor. So that's good for United. And given that their floor last season was still in the top 4, yeah, we have to put the two Uniteds and Arsenal and City as as our favourites to finish top four, and it's boring because that's how the table finished last season. But as we said, I think we can both agree on that. Those four teams have been the strongest in the league this season.
I can see Chelsea being in there as well. If Poch, I can see Chelsea being better than Liverpool this season, just based on the fact that the team, especially
that's
in
not the question.
The midfield is a lot better.
They could be better than us all they want.
I know, but I can see Chelsea disrupting that top four.
Well, if Nkuku's injury is as serious as feared, I can't see it anymore.
No?
If it's Mount, he was going to be too important.
Like a knee surgery, like I'm guessing it's months.
I think he's made one of my top three teams in both of the last two seasons. So that's how highly I rate this guy, and I think without him, I don't think they have the X factor that's gonna take them to those kind of top four levels. With him, I give them a shout. I would give them a shout. So, look, do we even need to do predictions now? Because we'll make one prediction, but our top four is done, isn't it? What order now? The question is, what order do you think it will be?
United fourth, but which one? Manchester United fourth, Newcastle third. Oh no, I reckon Newcastle will drop off actually. Newcastle fourth, Manchester United third, City second, Arsenal first.
Oh, and that's where we differ. I don't know about third or fourth. I don't know which order it'll be, and I think it'll be those two teams. If you pushed me for an answer, yeah, I'll agree. Manchester United third and Newcastle fourth. But Manchester City, after winning the league last season was the one that said, as long as Pep Guardiola is in charge of Manchester City, I am not betting against. I'm not predicting that they will not win the league coming into the next season. So, as we sit here right now, I can totally see Arsenal looking a better. Well, Arsenal looked a better footballing side for 2/3 of last season than Manchester City. But Manchester City still won it. So, as we sit here right now with no games of real consequence behind us, Manchester City are my pick for the league title.
Well, my predictions will change. I think that transfer window closes on the 30th of August. Well, first of September. Or does it go into like the 1st and 2nd of September now? Like I'm not quite sure, but basically end of the month it closes. So there's still 20 days left. If, for instance, I think Matthias mentioned something that Man City might be interested in Mitomo from Brighton. That could be a good Mahrez replacement. If they can hold on to Bernardo Silva, because Bernardo Silva, I'm not sure if I haven't heard confirmation that he's still staying, but by all accounts, he's most likely staying. If they hold on, if they don't have any more outgoings, except for like maybe like just some dead wood around like young players that aren't even in the starting 11 or starting like 13, 14 players, because Pep does rotate. And if they bring in like one or two more players that like a pretty quality replacements, especially a replacement for Mahrez, I can see them finishing first again. But then again, like I can see it. I can see it.
Stick in your neck.
I just feel like those intangibles surrounding, and I'm not saying this as a fan. I'm saying the intangibles surrounding Arsenal and the signings that they made, I think should give them that boost to kick on. Because like we saw it last season, for instance, the season before, they just finished fifth, so they had that disappointment of just finishing fifth, and then they just finished second last season after pushing on from just finishing fifth. So like maybe there might be just that growth as well as the disappointment and everything like that. That should, I can see them that being a real motivating factor. Whereas with City, like considering they won everything, outgoings as well, I can see them finishing second.
The difference for me is if City play at their best, they'll win the title. I can't be sure about saying that with Arsenal because they played pretty much to their best last season,
Yeah,
and they
pretty
didn't
much.
win a title. And I know they'll be better this season, but there's nothing to say Man City with Guardiola. Maybe even the Kovacic signing that they can't be better this, and Haaland becoming a better player that you've got to expect as well, and Alvarez probably becoming a better player as well. There's nothing to say that they won't be better this season as well. So that's my differentiating. That's why I put City just above, but I'm not going to quibble with putting Arsenal above because they are capable of winning. I just think City might need to drop off just a little bit for Arsenal to win it,
Yeah,
and that's the
but
question mark.
and
Does
all,
that happen?
and also we need to see how the Champions League affects Arsenal because they're no longer like,
Yep.
especially in the group stages, like they probably get like one minnow and then like two pretty quality teams. Whereas in the group stages of the Europa League, you know, you can pretty much field like your second string team. Whereas in the Champions League, you need to pretty much field your first starting 11. So we need to see how that's going to affect performances as well.
You're 100% right, and that's where the intangibles come as well. Because like we say, like we said with the question at the start that they should be in the top four for the best teams in Europe. There's also a scenario where I could see them, if they get a tough group, I could see them maybe not getting out of the group given the lack of experience. It's
hang on,
a tough competition, the Champions League.
I'm not sure how the groups were done, but like remember last year, like Barca, it was Barca, Inter, and
of
Bayern.
course, that's exactly what I'm thinking about. Yeah,
but Inter finished. The thing is, Inter finished second, Barca finished second in their leagues, like the year before that, and Bayern was the winner. So you get paired. I'm guessing you get paired with one league winner. Arsenal finished second, and then you get
I'm not
one,
sure if
and then
it's
you get another team
coefficient
from second.
over recent seasons as well. And given Arsenal haven't been in the Champions League for a while, I don't know what pot they'll be put in. That'll obviously be interesting to see where that's all finalised as well. Did you want to finish on while La Liga starts? So I reckon we don't need a top four because I don't know who I'm going to pick for that fourth place. But I think there's three clear main contenders for the title. So what's your 1, 2, 3 in La Liga? Just quickly.
Real Madrid, Barca, Atletico.
Yeah, I thought you'd go with Real Madrid. I'm going to go with Barca.
I'm just really liking like what they're doing in terms of recruitment and everything.
Yeah, I'll go.
And
I'll
it's
go
going to be
Barca.
Modric's last season as well, so it'll be a good way for him to go out.
It would be nice for him, obviously, on a personal note. I think I'm not convinced that it's going to gel quickly enough. Ooh, my question is, I think Barca will win it. I think if Atletico had a better off-season in terms of signings, or there's still time, but if they maybe make another centre-back signing, which I don't think they will, given that they brought in Soyuncu. I don't know why they brought in Soyuncu. That's a weird one for me. Maybe if they could bring in a player to have less reliance on Koke, that might convince me a bit more to put them above Real Madrid. I don't think anything they can do will convince me to put them above Barcelona. But Barcelona, is it inconceivable that they have some injury problems and they fall off a little bit? No, it's not inconceivable, especially with Ronald Araujo looking maybe like an injury-prone player at this stage. So, and I will agree with you on one thing. I think Real Madrid's ceiling is probably the highest, but I'm unconvinced about their ability to get it right from the start because I think they're going to have teething problems. Karim Benzema is a massive loss. He was the captain. He was the leader. He led from the front. It's now, you've got to think it will be up to Vinny to pick up that mantle, but they've also just signed a guy for over 100 million euros in Jude Bellingham, who was the man at his previous club. So is there a little bit of an arm wrestle there? That might be interesting to see in of itself. But yeah, I think their ceiling-wise, goalkeeper, defense, pretty strong. If they can get a relatively injury-free season from David Alaba, they'll be better for it. Tchouaméni as well, if he can have a full season, because he started really well to start of last season. Yeah, their ceiling is enough to win the league. I will agree with that, but as it stands, I'll put them second. I'll put Atletico third. So we'll just differ on who we think will win it.
Yeah, that's fine. We differ on the EPL who will win it and also La Liga who will win it. But
Let's see. They start this
Yeah,
weekend.
yeah. Let's see
So,
how they go. But yeah,
definitely.
Caleb, if there's nothing more to add, we'll reconvene sometime next week to review the opening weekend of football. Should be good. I'm looking forward to it.
It'll be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I don't know if I'm looking forward to it from a Liverpool perspective, but it's going to be interesting to see. I want some answers to these questions that we've posed.
Well,
In
one
this
thing that like me and Matti agreed on, for instance, was like your front, like is it Firmino's left? So what is it? Your front
front
five?
three with the
No, but your
options.
front
Yeah. Oh
five.
yeah, with the
Or,
options. Yeah, yeah.
like
That's good.
that, it's real. It's still really, really frightening, and
Yeah.
you guys might fall into the trap of just having to outscore teams in order to win
Yeah.
games,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
and I think like against the top teams, like for instance, playing against Arsenal, City, playing against United, maybe because I think they might want to start controlling the ball. But against teams that want to control the ball and control the ball more than you, and that allow you to counter attack, that's where you're going to pick up points. Whereas against teams that sit back, I think that's where you're going to really struggle, especially considering you don't have a great midfield.
Yeah, but the first pillar of counter attacking is being able to defend. If you're picking the ball out of your net, you're not counter attacking. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know about Liverpool,
Yeah,
but we talked about them. Let's see what happens.
let's see what happens. But yeah, Caleb, I'll see you next week. All our viewers, you'll see us next week. And yeah, hopefully we get some good games this weekend. Make sure you like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And thanks for coming, and bye for now.